Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on this Wednesday, the day before the game with Brøndby in the Europa League. Thanks for joining us at a slightly later time due to us being at the Steven Gerrard and Conor Goldson's press conference ahead of that Europa League game earlier this morning. Just me and Derek Clark today. Derek, you're not in your usual setting. There's some nice artwork to your right, but how are you today?
Yeah. I was at the crazy Plymouth Bolton game last night. If you've not seen it, folks, the third goal, I posted it on my Twitter account. It's comedic to say the least. The rain was coming down in biblical fashion, so it was something else. But yeah, looking forward to the game tomorrow. I know Steven Gerrard and Conor Goldson were put up for the press earlier on. And yeah, it's certainly a must-win game tomorrow. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's start with the injury update then, Derek. It was kind of positive news from the manager's front in that regard. Ryan Kent is close. Looks like he could be back for the St Mirren game, obviously, which is on Sunday. That's not set in stone, but there certainly seems to be an optimistic outlook from the Rangers manager on that one. Ryan Jack as well set to be back in training with the squad. Presumably around the Aberdeen game, which is, I think, a week. Is that a week today? So great news on both of those fronts, Derek. And the quicker that both of those are back, Ryan Jack is a standard setter defensively. Once he gets up to full fitness, I think will help Rangers protect leads so much better. Ryan Kent, I think, if he is on form, is the best player at Rangers. So positive news that both of them are close to getting back with the squad.
Yeah, I'm more so excited about Ryan Kent, if I'm being honest. I think Ryan Jack, he has to be eased in. There's no point rushing him back, and I think that the coaching staff will be quite careful with him because they can't afford to have him breaking down again. There's no point having him on the sideline, so I think that's going to be a gradual process. But Kent, it's clear that Rangers have missed his creativity and his ability to drag the team up the pitch and create things out of nothing. And now I know that he's not been at his scintillating best this season. He was carrying that injury, and I think this sort of lengthy layoff may actually have been a good thing for him in terms of coming back refreshed and ready to kick on. But certainly Rangers have missed his creativity. There's no doubt about it. It's only when you see the Rangers side without him in the team that you just realise how much they're reliant on him in terms of a creative sense and his work rate and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's encouraging news. And Ryan Jack, I think everyone would love to see him back in that Rangers engine room. But until that time comes in, people just need to be careful not to get too worked up about getting excited about seeing him coming back into the side, because he has been out for so long, and it has just got to be eased in gradually, I feel.
Yeah, good morning to Owen, Callum, Terry and Andy all tuning in and commenting. If you have any questions this morning, folks, do fire them in the comment section. We'll do our best to answer them. Another topic of conversation, I asked Gerrard this morning about the positives from the Hearts game, which obviously are harder to digest given the manner in which 2 points were really thrown away. But the manager spoke about the aggressive start, obviously with a slightly higher starting position for both Aribo and Hadji. The level that was found in the 45 being the level that take them where they want to be. That's kind of almost a buzzword that Gerrard seems to speak about a lot. But also, and Conor Goldson as well referenced, despite the fact that you're at Rangers, you need to win every game, so it's hard to take positives when you don't win. Certainly looking at it, Derek, and a few days on, watched the game back and watched the highlights as well, you can understand the manager and Goldson both trying to take performance-wise the positives out of that game. It was the first time Rangers have started really aggressively and fast in the season. Yes, they did continue to create high-value chances, but weren't very good after the break. But there has to be, I guess, some sort of post-mortem where they say, do you know what? At the end of the day, there wasn't the 3 points, but maybe in a strange way, it's better than scraping out another 1-0 win, because we've reminded ourselves of our level and given the supporters a type of intensity they want, if only for 45 minutes.
Yeah, although I'm sure the majority of fans would have been happy to scrape an ugly 1-0 win. To be honest, it's all about results with Rangers. performances come secondary, but they've not been able to string together a full 98-minute performance. The only one that sort of comes close to that, you would say, was perhaps at the Old Firm game, perhaps, but I wouldn't say they were at their scintillating best in that game either. Hearts in the first half, yes, it was much more like the Rangers side that we all know and performed last season. But there's a drop off in the second half, and it was evidently clear. And the coaching staff will be racking their brains to find out why that is, if it's a mental issue, fitness issue, or what have you. But certainly something that they'll need to try and work on. If they are only going to put in fits and starts of performances, then they need to make sure that they're doing enough to get ahead of steam and put teams away in that time, because they will be punished, as we've seen on Saturday, and likewise we'll see it again on Thursday if they don't put Brøndby away. They're any side in the Europa League are a decent outfit, so Rangers will have to make sure that they do enough if they are going to go through the gears perhaps and performance levels dip, then they're going to have to make sure that they see it out and there's not any defensive lapses and they put teams away, and it's crucial at this stage. You get punished. We've seen it before. Lyon and Sparta Prague get punished if you don't take your chances. So it's important that Rangers take those tomorrow. And the onus is on the likes of Alfredo Morelos. I know Steven Gerrard referenced him again today. The likes of him and the forward players as well to help him out. This is at their stage. This is the stage that Rangers want to play at, and the spotlight will be on them. It's up to them to shine.
Yeah, and Gerrard did speak about Morelos. He was asked about his goal return this season. He said he wanted more than 5 and 15 from the number 9, who's played the majority of minutes in that position for Rangers. And Rangers' chance creation numbers haven't been probably at their highest, but obviously certainly at the weekend they were. In Morelos, I think Morelos, the value of chances he had outweighed about 4 of the total the team had created in other games this season. So there were certainly chances there to be put away. But the manager also spoke about the importance of keeping his head down, perspective in these situations. Morelos obviously at the ground on Saturday cut a bit of a frustrated figure, and I thought was marshalled very well by Craig Halkett throughout the whole game. But they need someone to put the ball in the back of the net. I know you've spoken about Defoe yesterday, Derek. For me, tomorrow I'd arguably start Kemar Roofe through the middle, just because you know what you're going to get with him. I think Morelos, there's always a potential, but this season that there hasn't quite obviously been the consistency. So I don't know whether that's something we'll see. I know Roofe tends not to play as a sole number 9 in Europe, and likes to come off one of the flanks more. But if Morelos starts tomorrow, he needs to I think reward probably his manager's patience in him and his confidence in him, because he's had a lot of 90 minutes this season where you think he's just still not quite there performance-wise, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because for me, I know that the manager elected to play Fashion Sakala instead of him in the previous Europa League game against Sparta Prague, and it didn't quite work for me. I felt he should have started with Morelos, and I'm talking about players in the spotlight being on him. This is his stage. He loves playing European football, and he's come up trumps for Rangers so many times in this competition. So you wouldn't bet against him doing so again tomorrow night. But I get your point about Kemar Roofe. For me, Defoe aside, he's probably the best finisher at the club. And if he's fit enough, then he has to play for me. So it's an interesting one. There's a debate: can Morelos and Roofe play together? I'm not too sure that they've struck up a partnership that you're confident in as yet. So I think at the time being, it's one or the other for me. Based on Morelos' form, you'd probably play Roofe. But it's going to be a conundrum for the manager, because he knows and he's quite loyal to players that have delivered for him in the past. And that leads me to believe that he might just opt for Alfredo up front tomorrow night to lead the line. And I mean, goals aside, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to ruffle up that Brøndby backline and make it uncomfortable for them. He does that so well, and shield the ball and hold the ball up for players. So you can guarantee he's going to do that for the team. It's just if chances come his way, he has to take them, and that's it. That's a big question.
There's a big question indeed. It leads us nicely into Brøndby, Derek, and how we'll set up to face them. Gerrard was speaking about the threat that they pose with a two-man strike partnership. Obviously, we'll go into more depth on our teams tomorrow, which we need to do today, Derek, as well as looking at Brøndby in more detail in terms of what they'll pose as an opponent. I could see Morelos and Roof working, although I personally would always rather have the threat of a Sakala or a Wright or someone to stretch the pitch. Brøndby, I think, will probably sit in more than, certainly far more than Lyon, but even more than a Sparta Prague would. Looking at their two previous Europa League games, having spoken to a couple of journalists who cover them, and they'll probably play a 3 which will morph into a 5 at the back and kind of retain their depth with their little and large strike partnership, as Steven Gerrard spoke about today. Brøndby haven't started the season very well, maybe in a similar vein to Rangers, although their league position is a lot less complementary of what they've provided so far. I could see Morelos and Roof working in this game if the game is played more in Brøndby's half, but equally, I could see the game suiting Fashion Sakala, because if there's going to be space left in behind, you need someone to stretch it, or maybe whether it be Scott Wright. I thought Aribo also has looked really good from the right, whether that be as one of the 310s, whether that be, I thought the first 25 minutes in the last Europa League game against Derek, he was excellent, isolating himself one-on-one with his marker, coming off the right of the front 3, although he didn't have a very good game in the same position at home against Lyon. So it's quite the conundrum. You've also got the decision of who you play behind that. Obviously, Bakuna started in the right centre midfield position away at Sparta Prague. You've not got Glenn Kamara tomorrow, and presumably John Lundstram and Stephen Davis play together. So does that lend itself to playing more of a 4-2-3-1 with Hadji in front of them? I've given you about 100 topics there, but my rough question is, who do you start in that front area? For me, I think you've got to play Hadji, probably Aribo and Wright. So you probably keep roughly the same team as was played at the weekend, and maybe then it is a decision between one of Roof and Morelos up top.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do that, I just noticed Callum mentioned Newcastle have just sacked Steve Bruce, so I think everyone's seen that coming. It'll be interesting to see what happens next with regards to that. I know Steven Gerrard is reportedly on that 3-man shortlist. But to your question, Joshua, yeah, he's got decisions to make, the manager, in all departments, middle to front. You feel, I think, like you, it'll be a Lundstram and Davis combination. He likes to play the two sort of defensive midfield players, if you like, in European competition. For me, Hadji, I'd be looking at to start in that front 3. I just think, I know he sort of didn't do himself justice in the previous encounter. Not many players did, to be honest. But at Ibrox, again, like Morelos, it's a stage that he thrives on, and often he comes up trumps and he can prove to be the match winner. So I would think that you might opt to play Hadji on one side of that front 3. On the other side, I know you mentioned Scott Wright. For me, he sort of tailed off a little bit. He started the season off superbly well. He had that terrific goal, of course, against Livingston, didn't he? And then he was just looking really bright and full of invention. But it's not quite happened for him since. Just his decision making and his final touch just letting him down, and he has to get that right. I mean, there's no hiding place tomorrow night. So if he likes to play Scott Wright, then he really has to put in a real Rangers type performance and really grab the game by the scruff of the neck. But I'm not too sure he's going to play him, to be honest with you. I think that left hand side of the front 3 is certainly up for grabs. Will he play Roof? Be an interesting one. You maybe give up a little bit of pace to play that. If you play Hadji as well, then there's not really much pace up top, to be honest with you. So be interesting to see how he goes. I think whatever team he picks on paper should be good enough to beat Brøndby. But again, it's all about taking chances. The Rangers will have opportunities tomorrow night. Brøndby, I'd imagine, will have a few chances of their own. But it's up to both sides of the pitch. You see here Steven Gerrard talk about the game being decided in both boxes. He said that at the end of the game on Saturday. It's as much important for the back line to keep out Brondby as it is the forward line as well. So the likes of Conor Goldson and Leon Balogun would be the back two defensive pair. Now you'd imagine James Tavernier will retain his place, and then Bona Barisic on the left hand side. It's absolutely vital that they don't lose cheap goals and put themselves in trouble tomorrow night. But yeah, it's be interesting to see what team he selects. Do you play Aribo in that advanced midfield position, or do you play him up in a sort of forward three that he's done before? So many questions that the manager, I'm sure, will be trying to answer in the next just over 24 hours.
Just over 24 hours indeed. Let's finally talk, Derek, about Conor Goldson, who was asked about his contract situation in the press conference this morning. He said he hasn't heard anything, hasn't spoken to his agent or the club recently, so he couldn't tell you where it's at. But, reference, he was focused on the club, playing football, making sure this club wins. It's slightly vague, Derek. I guess it's not what supporters wants to hear. I guess it depends how much you read into it. Either you're saying, haven't heard much about it, which maybe suggests that there is the realistic a realistic potential he could stay, or that's a little bit of a worry that's kind of being palmed off. He did see, I must say, in his answer, he obviously wanted to speak about the importance of the next few games. I don't think that Conor Goldson's, personally, I don't think that the contract situation will impact him. I know maybe yourself and others would disagree with that, or would say that naturally it will. I think that actually his performances have been generally okay. I think he's been one of the more consistent performers. I thought some of his passing in the first half against Hearts, there was one pass in particular that took 5 Hearts players out of the game. Just an excellent pass, and a level of distribution from the back that will be so hard to replace if he does go. But that's my instinct to that comment, Derek. What's yours?
Yeah, it was vague. I'm in the camp of his answer sort of suggests that he may be on his way. I'm surprised that Rangers aren't pushing to get this deal done, because it's been dragging on now for several months, tail end of last season, over the course of the summer, and now we're heavily into this season as well, and it doesn't look like it's any further forward. For me, that leads me to suggest that Conor Goldson will be moving on at some point. Will that be in January? I mean, there's been no real interest from down south, has there? It's gone pretty quiet with regards to clubs keen on taking him away from Ibrox, which is slightly surprising, I've got to be honest. But you'd imagine there will be interest in January if this situation continues, with the opportunity to take him as a free in the summer. And I think also depends on if Rangers win the league and there's that carrot of the Champions League football that just may persuade Conor Goldson to stay at Ibrox. You just don't know what's going through his head. He's got a family to care for, of course, as well. He achieved the invincible season last season and winning 55. He's looked, like many players, slightly off it this season. There's no doubt about it, and it's easy to throw the rumbling contract situation in as a cause for his drop in performance levels. But his answer today doesn't lead me to suggest that he's going to be here longer than his contract contract situation. So it's just one of those. You can interpret it in two different ways, I guess. The club seem quite happy with the situation as it is, but again, like I mentioned, if any slight mistake that Conor Goldson makes, it's just going to be magnified because of this situation in the background of the pitch. Supporters would absolutely jump for joy and would be thrilled if he announced he was extending his stay and then pledging his future to the club. But who knows what's going on behind the scenes. But as long as he performs on the pitch at the moment, I'm sure supporters will be content with that.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll leave it there for today, Derek. We'll be back tomorrow, obviously, folks, in the morning with a more detailed look at the Europa League game tomorrow night against Brondby. Remember, you can subscribe to the Rangers Review for just £1 a month, which is obviously, as I always say, less than a newspaper a day. Today we've got an excellent piece analysing what John Lundstrom is doing well as the number 6, why that is improved his Rangers' fortunes, and plenty more to follow throughout the day tomorrow, and of course with all the reaction towards Thursday's game as well. Remember as well to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you are watching us on YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we will both speak to you tomorrow morning.